Chapter 340, Setting the Pieces in Motion, 4. See, I clank. Exiting the room I was staying in, I calmly looked at my surroundings. It's a lot quieter than I thought. Now that I was done with the deactivation of the beacons, it was now time that I properly scouted the place. Since I had to suddenly hasten my plans, I decided to get everything ready within the next day or so. The first step was to know the environment well. Although I knew the general layout of the place thanks to some of the things Waylon had sent me, I wanted to get a proper look myself. After all, seeing in person was much better than seeing through a small map. Moreover, the map was created by the spies sent by the dwarves. With everyone being strictly monitored, they were bound to miss something. Carl? What are you doing? But just as I took a couple of steps outside of my room, someone called out for me. It was the guard that had been assigned to me. Turning around, I irritably said, "What do you care what I do?" My unfriendly tone was done so that the guard would get the idea and leave me alone. Unfortunately, the guard didn't seem to care. Unfazed by my tone, he calmly said, "I am your guard, of course, I care. Right now you're probably one of the most wanted Duergar in the whole of Henler. I was told never to leave your side." Right, should have expected this. In hindsight, he wasn't wrong. Being the one responsible for shutting down the beacons, my life was in quite a bit of danger. Saying that I was the most wanted Duergar wasn't a lie. I truly was. Although I could probably defend myself now that I was C+ rank, with my every move being watched, I couldn't carelessly kill anyone at the moment. Plus, eyeing the guard next to me, I knew that his only goal wasn't just to guard me. Most likely, he had been sent by the elders to keep watch of me. It seemed like they still did not fully trust me. Unaware of what I was thinking, the guard continued talking. "We've already managed to stop 2 assassination attempts that were aimed for your life. If you go alone, I won't be able to protect you, and the elders would not let me go. For my life, I have to follow you." Fine. Listening to him continuously speak, I eventually relented. His presence wasn't the worst thing ever. At the very least, he could protect me. It would be pretty ironic if I died at the hands of a dwarven spy. Since only a few individuals knew of my presence here, as of this moment, I was the enemy of all dwarfs. "Thank you for understanding." Seeing me agree, the guard sighed in relief and thanked me. He then proceeded to run up to me. "So, where are you headed?" he asked, finally catching up to me. Glancing at him from the corner of my eyes, I responded, "Just casually looking around. I've been in the room for too long. Need a breath of fresh air." I see." The guard repeatedly nodded his head in understanding. He then started complimenting me out of nowhere. "With what you've achieved, getting a little bit of rest is the least you deserve. Your achievements are truly something noteworthy. With you, we might very well be able to finally cleanse this place of those bastards." Right. Listening to the guard speaking, I kept an indifferent and stoic face. Whatever he was saying just went from one ear to the other. After a while of this nonsense, just as I was about to get fed up by his bootlicking, a thought suddenly struck me. Wait, why don't I put the guard to good use? Since he insisted on following me, might as well have him be my guide. As he was a guard, without a doubt he knew the ins and outs of the place. Perhaps this may turn into a more fruitful opportunity than I imagined. Making up my decision, turning my attention back to the guard, I opened my mouth and ordered. "Oi, give me a tour of the place." "You what?" At my unexpected request, the guard halted his steps and looked at me with an incredulous expression. Also halting my steps, I looked back and asked in confusion. "What's wrong?" A tour? Have you not seen the place already? No. I shook my head and continued to move forward. Stroking my long beard, I muttered. I spend most of my time doing research. I've never bothered to check this place out, so I've got no clue about where I'm going. Since you like talking so much, be useful and tell me about the place. As I was talking, I secretly glanced at the guard from the corner of my eyes, hoping that he didn't notice anything strange. Although my request sounded a bit suspicious, given Carl's character, I was probably not that far off from the truth. After all, in his description, it did say that he was a research fanatic. Never left his room as he wanted to continue his research on memory extraction. In fact, he spent so much time researching that not many knew how he acted. This was why I was able to somewhat get away with the things I was doing. The fact that the guard didn't seem too shocked by my request was a testament to this, much to my fortune.
Ah,
I see. And I was indeed correct. After the initial shock of my request and thinking things through, the guard quickly recovered before nodding his head. I would be more than delighted by this request, if you would please. Picking up his pace, he started walking ahead of me. As he walked, he said, "I'll make sure to give you a detailed tour of the place. By the end of it, you will know the whole place as if it was your own house." Walking behind him, upon hearing his words, I suddenly smiled. I couldn't ask for anything better. Locke, Class A, 25. Hey, what have you been doing this past month? You've been acting awfully suspicious. Emma poked Kevin, who was packing up beside her. Standing up and putting both hands on the table, she looked at Kevin, who was still seated. You also seem a lot more cheerful than before. Did something good happen? Not particularly. Kevin replied, putting his notebook and tablet away in his dimensional space. Then why are you acting so suspiciously? Going out of the academy repeatedly, spending more time training in your room rather than at the training grounds, and even laughing to yourself at random times, something isn't adding up. The more she spoke, the smaller her eyes became. Lifting his head and staring at Emma's beautiful face, Kevin thought for a moment before standing up. Follow me, I've got something to tell you. Wait. But before Emma could protest, grabbing onto her wrist, he dragged her out of the classroom. Kevin, what are you doing? Let go of me. See, I clank. Exiting the building, Kevin soon headed for a rather secluded area. Kevin, let go of me. Along the way, Emma would protest, but regardless of how much she protested, Kevin did not let go. On another note, Emma's resistance was pretty weak. If she wanted to, she could have easily gotten herself free. Stopping in a rather secluded area, one devoid of any students, Kevin finally let of Emma's wrist. What are you trying to do? Holding onto her wrist, Emma looked at Kevin, her face was dyed red in embarrassment. Her thoughts were running wild. What do I do? Is he planning on doing what I think he's doing? Is he planning on confessing to me? Holding onto the side of her face, Emma could feel her cheeks burning up. Staring at Kevin, who was in front of her, Emma's continued to have wild thoughts as she couldn't help but fall into her own delusions. Should I say yes, or no? Although I do like Kevin, I don't know if this is the right time. We've just become third years and... Unaware of what Emma was thinking, Kevin checked his surroundings to see if there was anyone present. Then, waving his hand, he formed a small barrier around them. Good, no one is her. Are perhaps trying to. Emma shyly said from the side, cutting Kevin off. Tilting his head, Kevin asked. Trying to do what? You know, see, Con. Emma, I know where your father is. Before Emma could finish her sentence, Kevin cut her off and went straight to the point. Con, see, what? throwing Emma off guard. The moment she processed Kevin's words, her body froze and her face stiffened. Turning her attention back towards Kevin, her face frosted. Gone was her previous flustered appearance. "What did you just say? You better not be messing with. I will never forgive you if you do that." Looking back into Emma's eyes, Kevin answered seriously. "I'm not joking, I know where your father is." "How?" Biting her lips, Emma's shoulders trembled slightly. The side of her eyes reddened slightly. Raising her hand, she pointed her finger at Kevin. "Why, you better not be messing with me, Kevin. I am warning you. I am not. I know where he is." Grabbing onto Kevin's shoulders, Emma desperately said. "Tell me, please, I want to know." 3 years. She had not seen her father for 3 years. Ever since his disappearance, her life had slowly become miserable. Rumors that her father had died continuously spread throughout her family, and her position slowly started to fall more and more. It had gotten to the point where she couldn't even step foot into that place before someone would try looking for trouble with her. She couldn't take it anymore. Moreover, she couldn't accept her father's death. How could he, one of the strongest humans in existence, die? Emma couldn't accept it. But as time passed, and after receiving no contact from him for the past 3 years, her belief in her father slowly started to fade away. Perhaps he truly died. Emma thought to herself sometimes in her room multiple times. Perhaps he had truly died and the reason he couldn't contact her was because he couldn't. And the more time passed, the more she started to believe this. But just when she had given up and was starting to come to terms with it, Kevin suddenly dropped a bombshell on her. How could she not be this shocked? Is he okay? Did something happen to him? The number of questions she wanted to ask were endless, but what she wanted to know the most was whether he was okay or not. All that mattered to her was whether her father was doing well or not. "Calm down." Grabbing onto Emma's wrist, Kevin smiled. "He's doing fine." Emma raised her head. Her weak and fragile figure pained Kevin's heart. He is?" she weakly said, tears dripping down the side of her cheek. Wiping one of the tears from her face, Kevin smiled. "He is doing well." The moment he said those words, as though all of the pain and resentment she had bottled up over the past few years had disappeared, Emma finally smiled. Is that so? I'm glad, I'm so glad." It was a smile filled with relief. But to Kevin, who was standing opposite to her, the smile looked like the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Kevin?" It was only after Emma called out for him that he realized that he had fallen into a trance. Scratching the back of his head, he tried his best to hide his embarrassment. "Yes, as I was saying, your father is currently with the headmaster of the academy on a mission in the Dwarven domain." And so Kevin soon started telling Emma about what he knew. He of course did not tell her about Ren and the fact that a war was happening, but the more he talked, the bigger her smile became, and the more entranced he became with it. At the same time, Leviathan building, lock. Clank. The window of a particular room opened up and the sound of light footsteps echoed across the empty room. Step. 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 It wasn't long before the footsteps halted. As the footsteps stopped, a large shadow cast on the wooden floor of the room, right next to a large wooden desk. Extending his hand, the shadow reached out for the bookshelf on top of the wooden desk. Soon the shadow took a small rectangular object. Upon touching the rectangular object, the shadow halted for a second. Then, putting it on the table, the shadow's long and slender fingers were revealed. Flip, flip. Soon, a sound similar to that of pages flipping sounded. The sound continued for a couple of seconds before the shadow's body started to tremble uncontrollably. What followed after was a raspy voice that chilled the whole room. "Coo, coo, coo, I finally found you." Chapter 341, Taking the Initiative 1. Halting his steps in front of a large metallic door, the guard paused for a moment. Placing his small blue hand by the side of the door, the metallic structure rumbled and slowly opened up. Rumble. Once the door was halfway open, the guard started talking. "This over here is the artifact testing area. As you're probably aware, this place is dedicated to testing artifacts and their power." "Oh. I've heard of this place." Walking into the room, I pretended to be unamused by what I saw. In truth, I was beyond shocked. With all sorts of complex machinery around the room, Durgars could be seen testing all sorts of artifacts. Bang! Covered in sophisticated equipment, the Durgars tested weird-looking artifacts against some sort of odd machinery. Displayed on the machine was all sorts of data which other Durgars looked at by the side, taking notes on their holographic-looking devices. Some of the artifacts were so powerful that I could sense the mana in the air conjuring towards it. Keeping a straight face had never been more difficult for me. "I wonder if I can steal them," I thought to myself. Oddly enough, that was the first thing I thought as I looked at the artifacts. I couldn't be blamed though. Each one of the artifacts present would sell for astronomical prices back in the human domain. To be honest, the probability of me being able to steal them was low, but a man could dream, right? Actually, it's not impossible for me to steal them. A wild thought suddenly entered my mind. If everything proceeded as planned, then, perhaps, I may be able to take some of the stuff here. Unaware of the thoughts I was having, standing next to me, the guard patted the side of the walls. The walls of the facility are made of limestone, ensuring some solid safety. This way, our researchers can conduct experiments without restraint. Limestone? I raised my brow in mild surprise. From what I remember, limestone was an incredibly sturdy rock that could withstand heavy impacts. It was also ridiculously expensive. Tracing his finger across the wall, the guard nodded in affirmation. "That's correct. This whole place is made of limestone. Because of it, we don't have to worry about the facility if the artifacts ever do malfunction. The walls over here can withstand the full-blown attack of an SS-ranked artifact. They'd be stupid if they didn't do this much." I responded, trying my best to memorize the layout of the place. This place might turn out to be more useful than I thought. "Is this place isolated from the other areas?" I carefully asked. Depending on his answer, I could probably make up for the sudden time increase. Now, it was no longer a matter of greed. This place could be instrumental to my plans. Isolated? Are you asking whether the mana fluctuations and the like reach outside of this place? Yeah. Got it. In that case, no. Everything in this place is completely isolated. Take a look over there. The guard pointed towards the corner of the room, where a lone monitor stood. That machine over there measures the mana density in the room. When the mana density reaches a certain level, it will trigger a defensive mechanism and activate the security system, which in turn will shut the whole place down. If it shuts down, what about the ones stuck inside? Do they have a chance to flee? I assume this must happen in a matter of seconds. Them? The guard looked at the Durgars working on the artifacts in the distance before shaking his head. They'll be sealed inside, and probably die. We don't want to take any risks. For better or worse, everyone here knows how the system works, so they come prepared to die at any time. Pity flashed across the guard's eyes as he looked at the researchers in front of him. Either way, if they do end up surviving, the system will deactivate as soon as it judges that the mana density in the room is at safe levels. I see. That's quite ruthless of them. In order to make sure the threat would not go outside of the room, they were prepared to have anyone inside die. Though I didn't really care about what happened to the people here, I did feel that Inferno had taken some excessive measures. They were ready to sacrifice their own, after all. It would be a pity to lose so many talented researchers. Still, the information was actually quite useful to me. The plan that I had previously envisioned became much more feasible. Shall we go to the next area? The guard called out to me, moving towards the door of the facility. Taking one last glance at the facility, I nodded. Yes. Leviathan building, lock. CI clank.
Ha.
Returning to his room, Kevin let out a long, extended sigh. It took a while for him to calm her down as the news had truly shocked her, but Kevin did not regret telling the truth to Emma. Remembering her relieved smile, a small smile of his own appeared on Kevin's lips. I'm glad she's feeling better. Because of what was happening with her family, Emma had been going through a lot of stress. For her to finally show a happy smile, Kevin felt warmth in his heart. Wham! I'm tired. Yawning, Kevin headed towards his room. This morning, he had trained with Jean and Donna for over 6 hours. Kevin was understandably tired. Although it was only 7 in the afternoon, Kevin decided to head to bed. Pumph. Slumping on the bed, Kevin felt the soft covers gently embrace him. I should be able to rank up soon, Kevin thought as he stared at the ceiling of the room. He had broken through to C-rank not too long ago, but he felt that he could already break through to C within a month's time. His rate of progress was nothing short of astonishing. The only one that could keep up with his speed was Jean. With all of the resources at his disposal, thanks to his family, Jin's rate of improvement was just as impressive. Kevin estimated that by the end of the year, he and Jean would at least reach B- or B rank. After that, though, he estimated that his rate of progress would slow down considerably. According to the professors, once someone reaches A rank, the rate of progress would decrease dramatically. Right, I wonder what rank Rin is. It's been a while since I had last seen the book. Lifting his head up, Kevin looked towards his bookshelf right above the desk. Suddenly, his brows knit in consternation. Standing up, Kevin walked towards his desk. His face was extremely serious. Walking towards his desk, he looked through the bookshelf. However, despite how hard he looked, he couldn't find the red book. What in the? Frantically looking through his bookshelf, Kevin tried to find the red book. But, no matter how much he searched, he couldn't find it. No, this cannot be. Despair momentarily took hold of Kevin's heart, until he felt something hit his feet. Talk. Huh? Looking down, much to Kevin's surprise, he found the red book on the floor, open and facing upwards. Did it drop? Looking up towards his bookshelf, he found it plausible. Bending over, Kevin picked up the book. Looking at the book in his hand, Kevin had an ominous feeling. But, he couldn't quite understand where it was coming from. Oh, well. After a while, shaking his head, Kevin opened the book and proceeded to read through its contents. Henneler. Waylon made a call through an encrypted line. The members of Monolith seem to be on the move. They are heading towards your location. Should I proceed as planned? Yes. When you're ready, message me. The voice belonged to none other than Rin. What other plans do you have? Waylon asked. I found some useful information while I was looking around the place today. I'm going to set up a different portal over there. Get those that you trust to join you in the operation. Whilst everyone is distracted outside, we will attack from the inside.
Ha.
Waylon let out a sigh. Are you confident? No, not really. But... Ren responded after a short pause. Hints of doubt could be felt in Ren's voice. It looked like he wasn't too confident with the operation. Still, the small but at the end intrigued Waylon. But what? But I can make it work. It'll be hard, but I can do it. Ren. Waylon's face turned serious. I have no choice but to trust you. Me and Douglas, both our asses are on the line. The reason we chose to put ourselves in this situation is because we believe in you and your plan. Having second thoughts? Ren teasingly answered from the other side of the call. No. I trust you. So far, everything went according to Ren's plans. Ignoring the fact that if the mission failed he truly would be in big trouble, Waylon was impressed with what Ren had shown him. Ren was a sort of strategist and a man of action. He had already proven to him his capabilities. There was no time for doubt. You've already shown me enough to believe in you. Be careful, though. I don't want you dying on me just yet. Well, let's just say that it takes a lot to kill me. I'm a bit of a cockroach, you see. Odd thing to compare yourself to, Ren. Waylon shook his head with a smile. I'll do as you said. I've got to go now. I need to go speak to the elders. Got it. Best of luck. You too. Done. Waylon put the communication device away.
Ha!
Letting out a deep breath, Waylon fixed his clothes and proceeded to make his way towards a large familiar door in front of him. The door couldn't be considered large in the conventional sense, as it was about 5 meters in height. But given that it was made for dwarves, in a way it was. Arriving in front of the door, Waylon put both hands on it and pushed. CLA, clank. Upon pushing the door open, a familiar sight met Waylon. Sitting around a large, semicircular wooden desk, he saw all of the higher-ranked elders and individuals of the dwarven domain. The Council of Dwarves. However, the dignity and passion they held themselves with seemed to have dimmed. Compared to the last time he saw them, they had haggard, tired looks. It seemed as though the situation with the barrier had made them go through sleepless nights. The moment Waylon stepped in, all eyes were on him. Some were neutral, some even unfriendly. Yet, there were few filled with curiosity. But, in general, most gazes were filled with resentment. It was understandable, though. If not for his failure in protecting Jomnuk, none of this would have ever happened. Feeling the resentment-filled stares, smiling, Waylon paid no heed to them and walked towards the center of the room. Upon arriving in the middle of the room, with his back straight, Waylon looked at everyone present. His gaze unafraid, he stood tall and proud. No matter what, Waylon couldn't look weak. After a brief pause, he opened his mouth to address the Dwarven Council. Thank you for granting me your time despite the predicament you face. Pausing, Waylon looked at each and every individual present. Be it dwarf, orc, or elf, all eyes were on him. No one talked or disrupted him in the brief silence. His eyes soon paused on Douglas. He encouragingly nodded in his direction with a calm smile. Yes, Waylon might have forgotten it for a second. He had someone to support him here. Smiling back, Waylon spoke with even greater suave. The reason why I've gathered you here is simple. In 2 days. Everyone stared at him. None ignored him. This was it. I planned to end this war. The moment Waylon bet his own life had come. Chapter 342, Taking the Initiative, 2. I've got a way to stop the war. A palpitating, almost chilling silence enveloped the hall as everyone stared at Waylon in the middle of the room. Before anyone could speak or voice out their objections, Waylon continued speaking. Yes, I know what you guys are thinking. Is he crazy? Is he out of his mind? Is he right in the head? I'd also think the same if I were to be put in the same position as you all. Waylon looked around before his eyes soon paused on Jernus, the Metropolis Keeper, and leader of the dwarfs. I know what I'm saying is absurd, but I really do have a way to end this war. You don't have to be. Unfortunately for Waylon, in the end, not everyone could keep themselves from voicing out their objections. Standing up, one of the elders shouted. What en? Quiet. A sharp voice echoed throughout the hall, cutting the elder off before he could formulate a sentence. Glaring at the elder, Jernus solemnly said. I will nae permit any talking until he be done speaking. His deep voice traveled through the ears of each individual present. A strong pressure came along the voice. I apologize. Reprimanded by Jernus, swallowing his pride, the dwarf apologized to Waylon, who merely smiled in response. Turning his attention back to Waylon, Jernus gestured for him to continue. Sorry for the disturbance, ye may continue. Thank you. Waylon thanked. As I was saying, I have a way to end this war. I know that you all must be doubting my words, hence why I came prepared. Swiping his hand in the air, a scroll suddenly materialized out of nowhere. What in the? A mana contract. Is that a mana contract? Everyone instantly recognized the scroll that appeared in Waylon's hands. It was a mana contract. Something that most individuals present in the hall had used once before, except the orcs of course. Correct? Waylon said as he reached out for the contract in the air. Grabbing the contract, he slowly unraveled it for everyone to see. Since none of you might believe me, I thought to myself. Is there a way to convince you guys that I'm not lying to you and that I truly know of a way to stop the war? Glancing at everyone in the room, Waylon flashed a smile. Well, guess what? There truly is a way. Waylon raised the hand that held onto the scroll. This over here is the highest ranked mana scroll that I could find. Meaning that it is of the highest rank available. If by any chance I breach the contract, according to the contract, I will instantly die, regardless of my rank. As Waylon spoke, the eyes of the individuals in the room finally changed. At the mention of the contract, the individuals who had previously treated this meeting as a mere joke finally had to change their stance. The moment he took out the contract, they knew that this could no longer be a job. Almost everyone in the room knew how a mana contract worked, therefore, they knew the severity of Waylon's words. There were no falsehoods in his words, that was unless he didn't value his life. At this moment, everyone in the room understood one thing. Waylon was putting his life on the line. He was putting his life on the line to prove to everyone present that he truly knew of a way to end the war. You're being real? The first one to speak up was Rander, the dwarf that had been giving Waylon a hard time in the previous meeting. Glancing at Rander, Waylon looked towards Jernus, who was looking back at him. His face clouded with unprecedented solemnness. After a while, opening his mouth, Jernus asked. Can I see the contract? Yeah, you can. Waylon nodded with a smile. Evidently prepared to have been asked such a thing. Here you go. Walking up to Jernus, Waylon handed him the contract. As he moved, Waylon noticed everyone's eyes focus on him, or more specifically towards the contract in his hands. Let me have a look. Taking the contract from Waylon's hands, Jernus started looking through it. Let me see just how valid your words be. Staring at Jernus, who was looking through the contract to see if there were any loopholes, Waylon merely smiled. He was confident that regardless of how much Jonas looked, there wouldn't be any loopholes. Before singing it, he had gone through it with Douglas and Ren. As they were checking, they made sure to remove anything that the dwarfs could use as a point to dismiss his contract. Fortunately, it seemed like they had indeed managed to remove all loopholes as an astonished look soon appeared on Jonas's face. "You, to go this far? What is it? Let me have a look," Rander impatiently said as he eagerly looked at the contract in Jonas's hands. "Have a look at it yourself." Taking his eyes away from the contract, not minding Rander's attitude, Jonas passes the contract onto him, who quickly snatched it and went through its contents. "What in the—" But just like Jonas, a shocked look appeared on his face as he looked through the contract. "This, if I, Waylon Rochefield, do not have a way to stop the war, will die. If I, Waylon Rochefield, backstab the dwarves in any way, will die. If I, Waylon Rochefield." Opening his mouth, he started reciting the contents of the contract for everyone that was present in the room. The more he spoke, the more shocked he was. The contract was truly straight to the point. If he breached even a single point of the contract, he would die. He was leaving himself with no leeway to lie. No matter how much Rander looked at it, there were no loopholes. The others in the room also realized this as they all looked at Douglas with shocked eyes. Does he really know of a way to end the war? Everyone wondered. Noticing the changes that were happening in the room, Waylon smiled in satisfaction. Everything is going just as planned. Signing a mana contract was in fact his idea. Although Ren was the one that came up with most of the plans, that didn't mean that he and Douglas were useless. They also contributed to the plan by either polishing it or expressing their inputs on areas that needed to have further consideration. One of the areas they needed to cover was how to have the leaders believe their words, and it was Waylon's idea to use the mana contract to shut everyone up. Since everyone knew what it was, no explanation needed to be said when presenting it to the leaders. The move worked flawlessly. If I, Waylon Rochefield, break any one of these statements, I will die. Disrupting him out of his thoughts was Rander, who finally finished reciting the contents of the contract. A heavy silence descended in the hall as Rander's words fade. The silence did not last for long, as not long after, total chaos erupted in the hall. Is that really a mana contract? Do you really have a way to stop this war? Human, tell us immediately how we can stop this war. Is that a real mana contract? Everyone fervently looked at Waylon, who was standing in the middle of the hall. All at once, everyone in the room kept asking question after question. Under the barrage of questions, Waylon was a bit taken aback as he wryly smiled. Please ask one at a time. I can't answer everyone at the same time, he helplessly said. Silence, everyone. Coming to Waylon's aid was Jonas. His powerful voice and aura spread throughout the whole hall, silencing everyone present. Finally, much to Waylon's relief, all forms of noise ceased. Nodding his head, turning his attention back towards Waylon, Jonas asked. Waylon, now that everyone is quiet, tell us what you want us to do. To those in the hall, Jonas's words sounded normal, but Waylon knew what he meant when he said, tell us what you want us to do. Rather than asking Waylon about the plan, he had directly asked him about what they were supposed to do. The implication behind those words was clear to Waylon. Avoid speaking about the plan, and just speak about what we need to do. It was clear to see that Jonas was aware of a possible spy hiding in their midst. If Waylon said all of his plans, there was a good chance that their plans would be exposed to the enemy and would end up no longer working. Yes, I will. Nodding towards Jonas to gesture that he understood his intentions, Waylon looked towards everyone in the room. The plan is simple. In 2 days, come to this place. Make sure you bring as many subordinates as possible. Preferably, ones that can fight. The more the better. His words instantly created another buzz in the hall as everyone started to discuss amongst themselves. Subordinates? Ones that can fight? It wasn't long before someone asked him a question. Are you sure we should be bringing our strongest warriors? What about the barrier outside? Who is going to defend that? Expecting such a question, Waylon answered swiftly. Good question, but you don't have to worry about that. The barrier is strong and sturdy enough to last at least a couple of days of constant attacks. That was true. In fact, the barrier could probably last even a week. The plan was going to be put in motion in a couple of days. By the time they were done with the operation, they wouldn't have to worry about the barrier not holding up anymore. How sure are you that this operation will succeed? Rander asked from the side. If something goes wrong with the operation, by the time we come back, Henler, the barrier is going to be weakened to the point that we will be surrounded by all the demons. It's basically a do or die type of plan, no? At Rander's words, Waylon merely smiled. You're correct, however I am confident in our chances of winning. You don't really have to worry about the barrier. It's a gamble. But it's a gamble that will guarantee you victory. From how things are going, even if the barrier does hold up, we are set to lose. Though Waylon's words were harsh, he was merely speaking the truth. From the way things looked, the probability of the dwarfs winning was quite low. Even if the beacons still worked at the end of the day, the number of demons attacking the city was endless. Everyone in the room also understood this, hence why, after a brief silence, much to everyone's surprise, Rander spoke up. Okay. I will do as you said. The moment Rander spoke, a look of shock appeared on the faces of some of the elders present. It had to be noted that Rander was one of the dwarfs that were most vocal against Waylon. For him to suddenly agree, the other dwarven elders had no idea on how to respond apart from also agreeing. I will also do the same. Me too. Soon, more and more joined in and agreed to the proposition. Looks like everything is set. Staring at the communication device in my hand, a smile crept up on my face. I then glanced towards Angelica, who was standing on my right. Get ready, we're about to move. Okay. Right as those words faded, black smoke released from Angelica's body as she rapidly shrank. Tick. Once the black fog faded, what remained was a small tooth. Bending over, I picked it up. Crack-a. KH. Touching one of my teeth, I yanked it out of my body. Though it was painful, I did not show it outwardly. This was nothing compared to what I went through at the monolith. Replacing the tooth with Angelica, I bit my teeth a couple of times before glancing at the room behind me. A day has passed since Waylon told me that he had managed to convince the elders. Now, I had just received a report from him telling me that the monolith members seemed to be close to the Inferno headquarters. According to Douglas, the one that was following them, they seemed to be closer to their target. Closing my eyes, I numbed down my emotions. Thereafter, I activated the chip inside of my head. Instantly, my brain functions sped up and everything became much clearer to me. CA clank. Extending my hand forward, I opened the door and exited the room. Time to piss off another major organization. Chapter 343, Beginning of the Assault, 1. In a remote location of Henneler, 4 individuals walked through a long, narrow dark tunnel. It had been about a day since they decided to accomplish their mission, and for that long period of time, they had been stuck going through the unending dark corridors. For how long they walked, it seemed as though the number of tunnels was endless. Just when the group thought they were close, they would suddenly find themselves in front of a dead end. It was then that the group of 4 realized they had taken things too lightly. Even though 876 had entered the city and managed to get away from their sight, there was no way he would just stay in the city without finding a proper hiding spot. Dang. A dull metallic ring rang out. The signal disappeared again. One of the 4 individuals spoke up, his voice echoing through the tunnels. Odd. Another one muttered. Holding onto a small, dimly lit lamp, the features of the individuals became slightly discernible. Long, silver-colored hair, a feminine-looking face, and a fairly skinny body. If not for the Adam's apple protruding from his throat, someone could have easily mistaken the man for a woman. Squinting, the silver-haired male scanned the surroundings. The same thing happened a day ago. He suddenly disappeared for a couple of hours. Lowering his head and staring at the detector in his hand, the silver-haired male tapped the back of the device. Or could it be that this thing is broken? Ever since arriving at Henneler, the group had kept constant watch over the tracking device. Oddly enough, at times, the tracker's signal would suddenly disappear, leaving them wondering whether something had gone wrong with the device. The more plausible conclusion is that 876 entered some sort of restricted area that blocks all forms of signals. Another one of the members said. That's true. The silver-haired male replied. Moving the small lamp towards his right, the features of the individual who had just spoken were highlighted due to the light. He had a tall and muscular stature, his biceps the size of a football. With short hair fashioned into a buzz cut, a large scar traced half of his face. Added with his sharp gaze, he looked extremely intimidating. With his brows knit, the muscular man thought out loud. If he's in an area where the signal is constantly disrupted or shut off, we can assume that the place is extremely well protected. He turned to face the silver-haired individual. I suggest we wait for the signal to come back before deciding to ambush him. I agree, but we should first get an idea of where he is. Let's assess the situation after we know of the exact location he is hiding in. If we can handle it, we proceed as planned. Yes. The muscular man nodded. Ding. But it was then that the tracker rang again. The signal is back. The silver-haired male shouted. Lowering his face to get a closer look at the device, his eyes jumped up in delight. We're close. We're almost at the location where that little rat is hiding. Clenching onto the sides of the device, the silver-haired individual smirked before picking up his pace. Quickly, follow me. We should soon be able to see that little bastard that has caused us so many problems. Following his words, everyone increased their pace and headed deeper into the tunnel. At the same time, not far from the members of Monolith. Materializing a couple of meters away from them was Douglas, whose face contained unprecedented solemnity. Staring at the members of the Monolith not so far from where he was, waving his hand, a transparent shield enveloped the area Douglas was in. Then, whilst still hidden from the members of Monolith, Douglas threw a small device on the floor. Tick. The device didn't look particularly eye-catching, as it seemed rather dull and unassuming. But, the moment Douglas threw the device on the ground, the mana in the air suddenly twisted wildly. If anyone was present to witness the scene, they'd see several small tornadoes appear in the air, where the tip at the bottom funneled towards the device in the middle. As time passed, more and more tornadoes formed, all converging towards the device in the middle. Clank. Before long, the device opened up and a small portal started to form. Because of the barrier Douglas had formed, the residual mana that lingered in the air from the portal's activation did not leak outside. Therefore, the members of Monolith were completely oblivious to what was happening. Boom. It wasn't long before a large portal appeared in front of Douglas. Turning his wrist, Douglas looked at the display of his watch. 01H, 32M, 53S. Once he finished checking the watch, lowering his hand, he took out a communication device from his dimensional space. You're done setting up? Wayland's voice echoed across the expansive hall. Correct. According to what I heard, we shouldn't be too far from the Inferno headquarters. Just in case, I double-checked with the coordinates that Rin sent me, and we shouldn't be too far. Douglas's voice echoed outside of the communication device in Wayland's hands. That's perfect. I'll get everyone ready then. As most of you already know, this over here is a teleportation device. Lowering his body and activating it, the mana in the air slowly started to converge towards the box. Multiple different colored tornadoes swirled around the teleportation device. Slowly, a portal started materializing in the middle of the hall. While the portal was forming, looking at all of the individuals in the hall, Wayland mysteriously smiled. You want to know how to stop the war? If you want to know, all you have to do is step into this portal. Pausing, Wayland saw worried looks flash by the faces of some of those present. With a calm smile, he decided to assuage their fears. If you're worried that I will send you to some unknown location to trap you, fret not. If you check the contract that I signed, one of the terms there states, if I, in any way, try to scheme or work against the dwarves' benefit, I will die. Patting his chest, his smile widened. As you all can see, I'm alive and well. There is no need to worry about me doing anything sketchy against you guys. Oh. The portal is ready. Mid-speech, Wayland suddenly noticed that the portal was now ready. Glancing at the watch on his wrist and taking a step to the side, Wayland pointed at the portal and said in an amused tone. I think I've said enough. Who wants to go first? 0055M, 21S. They should have already started. Going out of my room, with the mask on my face and Angelica stuck in between my teeth, as much as she hated it, I walked towards the room that the guard had shown me a few days ago. Master Carl, are you going somewhere? But of course, the moment I took a step out of the room, the same guard came to greet me with a smile on his face. Taking a small break, are ye, Master Carl? You can say so. At the guard's questions, I gave an indifferent response and continued to head towards the artifact testing zone. Already used to my dismissive attitude, the guard walked up next to me and rubbed his small blue hands together. If I may ask, where are you going? Staring at him from the corner of my eyes, I pretended to be irritated. Can you just shut up? I'm trying to have a break. Your constant yapping is getting on my nerves. I apologize. At my harsh words, lowering his head, the guard apologized. Humph. Snorting, I turned my head and ignored the guard. Know your place. Asterisk. Walking through a series of corridors and stairs while maintaining a steady, unhurried pace, I finally arrived at the artifact testing grounds. Artifact testing ground? The guard muttered as he stared at the room in front of him. He had followed me quietly up until now. Clank! Ignoring the guard and placing the palm of my hand on the side of the door, a blue glow enveloped it and the door soon opened. Before entering the room, halting my steps right at the edge of the room, I looked towards the guard and said with an annoyed look on my face. Stay out here, and don't follow me. Huh? The guard looked at me in surprise. Raising my brow, my tone became harsher than before. Did you not hear me? I said, stay out of the room and guard me from there. Don't tell me you can't do this much. I can, but I don't care. Before the guard could even voice out his complaints, I entered the room and closed the door behind me. Clank. Once the door behind me closed, looking left and right, I walked ahead, pretending to look at the place. Bang! Bang! Just like the first time I came here, Durgars could be seen testing all sorts of artifacts on the machinery present before them. Because everyone was so focused on what they were doing, no one noticed my presence. That was exactly what I wanted. Walking around the place, I carefully scanned the room and took note of each and every piece of surveillance equipment installed in the room. It didn't take long for me to spot all of the surveillance equipment that was installed in the room. There's a total of 2 camera-like devices installed in the room, diagonal to each other. That's manageable. Once I spotted all of the devices, checking my watch, I walked towards one end of the room. Tick. Stopping right below one of the surveillance cameras, I put my hand in my mouth, removed a small tooth, and dropped it on the ground. Right after that, tapping on my bracelet, I took out a balled-up piece of paper and threw it on the ground, right next to the tooth. What is this crap doing here? I thought I had thrown it away. Kicking the paper lightly, I pretended to look around the place with a bored face. It wasn't long before I stopped right under the second surveillance system camera. I probably shouldn't have come here. What a waste of time. I muttered whilst leaning on the wall. As I leaned on the wall, I checked my watch. 5 more minutes. 00H05M 46S. Chapter 344, Beginning of the Assault, 2. Ohm. A repetitive humming sound echoed, and what followed after were the tapping of footsteps, each sounding different. Some were heavier, some lighter, and others so faint that unless one paid close attention, they wouldn't be able to hear it. Slowly, emerging from the portal that Douglas had set up, were the elders and the respective fighters of the other race. What's going on? Where be ye? Where is this? The moment they became aware of their surroundings, a multitude of different questions rang in the air. An atmosphere of anticipation and slight nervousness ensued. Please be quiet for now. Waiting on the other side of the portal, Douglas tried to organize everyone present. Because of the number of people present, it took quite a while for them to get out of the portal. As the dwarves, orcs, and elves came out of the portal, the transparent shield that was enveloping them expanded. This of course was at the expenditure of Waylon's mana. However, for someone of his rank, this amount of mana was nothing worth taking note of. Plus, Waylon was willing to give it his all to make sure every step of the plan he was responsible for went flawlessly. It took a lot of time to organize everyone, and by the time the last batch came out from the portal, only 5 minutes remained. That should be the last group left. Coming out of the portal, Waylon headed towards Douglas. Glancing at everyone and making sure that there were no problems, Waylon asked in a calm tone that belied his inner emotions. Have you organized everyone properly? There should be no problems for now. Turning to face everyone present, Douglas looked at the leaders and elders of each group, beckoning them to come towards him. Because they had always been focusing their whole attention towards them, the moment Douglas called for their attention, they immediately moved towards him. What have you gathered us here for? Rander, one of the dwarven elders, asked. With his brows tightly knit, he looked around the place. Where exactly are we? You don't have to worry about that. Waylon replied with a small smile. All you have to do is listen to us and we can get this over with without a hitch. At Waylon's words, Rander stopped speaking. Satisfied with the outcome, Waylon looked at everyone present and asked, I'm sure most of you are wondering about what you are doing here. Am I right? Without giving them a chance to answer, Waylon glanced at his watch and continued to speak. Listen up closely. We only have about 5 minutes left before we start the operation. Turning his attention towards Jernus, who was silently standing in the middle of the group, Waylon gave out instructions. We're going to separate into 2 groups. One group will consist of all the elite warriors that are here, and the other group will be made up of the strongest present here. The lowest rank amongst that group will be S rank, and we can only have a maximum of 5 people in the group. Turning his head right, Waylon looked at Jernus. Well, if we exclude me and you, it would be 3. So ye be basically asking me who the three we should send with ye guys should be? Right. You're the only one I trust that can do this, Jonas. I see. With his brows locked into a tight frown, Jonas looked behind him, towards the group of elites he'd stuck with through thick and thin during the whole war. Although Waylon's request was odd, because of the mana contract and the fact that they were already too deep into this, Jonas decided to not question any of their decisions and just went along with it. Staring at the members present, he did not have any trouble selecting two of them. Eris, Atruk, would you be so kind and go with them? The moment he called out the two names, everyone turned their heads and stared at the two individuals. One was an orc while the other was an elf. With long, silver-blonde hair, Eris, the elf that was called out by Jonas, stepped forward without hesitation. With a cold face and long eyelashes, Eris looked incredibly stunning. As she moved forward, everyone could feel a tremendous pressure emanating from her small body. I have no problems with the arrangements, she said as she walked towards Waylon and Douglas. Me too. Following her words was a deep and powerful voice. Stepping out of the group was a large orc, Atruk. It wasn't hard to spot him. The moment he stepped out, his towering and muscular figure pushed aside those that were next to him. Compared to Eris, who had a small figure, Atruk was the exact opposite of her. It was difficult to say who was the scarier one. It looks like this group will have the most fun role. Ignoring Atruk's last comment, Jonas nodded towards the team assembled so far and turned his attention back to the rest. With one human, one dwarf, one elf, and one orc, the composition of the group was almost perfect. What they were now missing was a dwarf. Someone that was capable of handling multiple artifacts and help from both long and short range. Although Jonas could do this as well, he specialized more in defending due to all of his artifacts being defense-based. Although he did have attack-oriented artifacts, his main role was to defend Henneler and evacuate everyone in case a disaster struck the city. It was also because of this reason that he was called the Metropolis Keeper. Either way, selecting another dwarf was a lot more difficult for Jonas as he wasn't clear about what type of mission they were going to partake in. But before Jonas could come up with a decision, Waylon spoke up, pointing at Rander, who had a surprised look on his face. If you're looking for a dwarf, we believe Rander is a perfect choice. Me? Yes. If there's anyone that can help us, it would be you. I'm certain. A small smile appeared on Waylon's face as he looked at Rander. Are you sure? Jonas asked as he looked at Rander with a complicated look. Waylon's decision was odd. He had witnessed the amount of animosity Rander had with him these past few weeks, so for Waylon to choose Rander out of everyone present was odd. But, in the end, he couldn't go against Waylon's decision. After all, he must have a reason for choosing Rander out of all people. I guess that's all for this group. The rest will form the other group. Looking at Jonas, Atruk, Eris, and Rander, Waylon nodded in approval before turning his wrist and taking a glance at a certain watch. 00H, 02M, 34S. Turning his attention back towards Douglas, Waylon's face became incredibly solemn. The calm had been replaced by grim determination. Douglas, we don't have much time. Lead the council to a frontal assault. I'll start setting up the portal now. Okay. Nodding in acknowledgement, Douglas waved his hand and removed the barrier that was enveloping everyone present. Instantly, everyone's presence was no longer masked. Their auras sprung forth, forming a deafening pressure. Raising his voice, Douglas calmly walked forward towards the end of the tunnel and opened his mouth to address the main group. Everyone, we will now start the assault. Please get ready for battle. His calm voice traveled through the ears of each individual present, and even though many had questions such as who they were going to attack, the council decided to follow his instructions and took out their weapons. No matter how the situation turned out, they would not be unprepared. They had been roped into this by the human, but they weren't wannabes. Each one present had the means to secure their safety if things went awry. They were the strongest elites of Henneler, not some wannabe soldiers. On the other hand, throwing another device on the floor, a familiar scene appeared in front of Waylon and the others. Turning towards Jonas and the rest, Waylon checked his watch one more time. Get ready. We're about to do something extremely dangerous. Even though I know you guys are strong, stronger than me, in fact, I can't guarantee that you will all make it back alive. I can just guarantee one thing. They were about to infiltrate Inferno, one of the most powerful organizations in the Dwarven domain. Of course, not all would make it back. Waylon took a deep breath and stared at everyone present. This war is about to end. Human, I like you. You say some bold things. I'm even more excited now. Contrary to what Waylon expected, Utruk burst into laughter, his eyes shining eerily as he stared at the slowly forming portal. If you're saying that it's dangerous, then it must mean that we get to fight a lot, no? I'm all in. Since you said that this mission can stop the war, I would at least expect this much danger. Jonas said from the side, seemingly unconcerned by the danger the mission proposed. Next to him, Eris and Rander did not show any reaction, indicating that they too were ready for what was about to come next. I guess you guys aren't powerful leaders for nothing. Smiling, a huge portal formed behind Waylon. Turning his attention to the portal, Waylon checked his watch. 00H, 00M, 02S. It's time. Without wasting any more time, glancing toward the others, he took a step into the portal. I'll be going in first. His figure had disappeared halfway. I'll wait for you on the other side. Once Waylon's words faded, he had completely disappeared into the portal. A little bit before Waylon entered the portal. Staring at the tracking device in his hands, the silver-haired male from the monolith muttered, "How long has it been since we lost the signal again?" "I would say about an hour." The muscular member replied, his brows tightly furrowed. Compared to the previous occurrences, there has never been a time where we lost the signal for so long. True. The silver-haired male replied, his words drawling as he suddenly felt an ominous premonition. Even still, if we follow the previous coordinates, we should be right around here. The silver-haired male tilted his head and checked the tracking device again. Something isn't adding up. Despite standing close to where 870 SIXS signal indicated, the only thing they saw was an endless dark tunnel. There was nothing in the vicinity. Strange. The muscular male said as he scanned the surroundings. Taking a brief glance at the tracking device, he carefully inspected the surroundings. Yet, wherever he looked, all he saw was just one long tunnel that led to nothing. Walking towards one end of the corridor, he put his hand on the side of the wall. The moment he touched the side of the wall, he suddenly noticed something. "Hey, Miles, I think I know where that bastard is hiding." "You found something, Lawrence?" "Yes, have a look." The silver-haired male, Miles, looked around in anticipation at the muscular male's words. Once he turned his head, Miles had a sudden look of understanding. No wonder we couldn't see him. With half of Lawrence's hand inside the wall, it became clear to everyone present that there was more to the place than what met the eye. This appears to be an illusion. The rat is probably hid, huh? Before he could finish his sentence, the muscular male, Lawrence, froze in shock. Then, unprecedented fear clouded his face. What the dash? He wasn't the only one. Everyone showed a similar reaction as all the members seemingly froze in place. Turning their heads towards the direction they came from, they suddenly felt a monstrous presence headed for their direction. The pressure was so strong that even they had difficulty breathing. "Let's go." Without thinking twice, all members rushed towards the illusionary wall. Since the wall could hide their presence, they thought that this was their only option of escape. Fear had clouded their judgment. Chapter 345, Beginning of the Assault, 3. 00H02M, 23S. Angelica, get ready. Taking my eyes away from the watch, I reminded Angelica inside of my mind. "I got it, no need to tell me." Angelica coldly replied inside of my head. "Just making sure." I replied back, unbothered by her attitude. At this point, I was already used to her attitude. Even if she was cold to me, at the end of the day, she did whatever I asked her to do. So, I had nothing to complain about. Taking a good look at the surroundings and making sure that no one was paying attention to me, I kept a close look on my watch. Almost. Very soon, total chaos would descend on this place, both internally and externally. The external threat would be from Douglas attacking the outside of the facility with all the warriors gathered, and the internal one would be from Waylon and the others infiltrating through the portal I had set up in the room I operated in. Since the dampening system was turned off in that one specific room, setting up a portal was not a problem. Which was exactly what I did. Having completely gained the trust of the Durgars after removing the second beacon, they no longer suspected me of having ulterior motives, and just let me do whatever I wanted. Unfortunately for them, this had been a setup from the very beginning. Soon, when the timer on my watch hit 0, Waylon alongside his small group would appear inside of the building. Douglas, on the other hand, would start attacking the place from the outside. Timing was essential for this operation. Once Douglas started attacking outside the headquarters, most of the attention of the higher-ups would get focused there. This meant that less attention would be put on Waylon and the others who would enter the headquarters through the portal. But of course, I couldn't guarantee that no one would take note of their appearance. The fluctuations they would release couldn't go unnoticed by the elders of Inferno. Hence why, after a bit of thinking, I came up with another idea and headed towards this room. My plan was simple: create chaos inside of this facility a little bit before Waylon and his group stepped into the headquarters. The goal was to divert attention away from them and have it focus on me. But I couldn't guarantee whether it would work. Yet, it was worth a try. Also, because this place was made of limestone, I wasn't worried about my safety. It would take at least a couple of SS ranks to enter this place forcefully, and with what was happening outside, I'm sure the elders would suddenly suffer a massive headache with all the trouble going on at the same time. The more the internal chaos, the higher the chances that the operation would succeed. Since this was all happening at the same time, the elders would have little to no time to think before they would be forced to act. And because of this, the higher the chances of mistakes happening. 00H01M 09S. Angelica, let's start. Checking my watch one last time, I decided to act. Crash. Lifting my head, I threw a small object and destroyed the surveillance system in one go. The sound that came from the destruction of the surveillance system was minimal. In fact, it didn't matter whether I was loud or not. Since the sounds that came from the artifacts being tested were way louder, no one inside of the facility was able to tell what I just did. That's one down. Once I destroyed the surveillance system, lifting my head slightly, I spotted Angelica in the distance. Because she barely had any demonic energy in her body, and everyone was focused on their experiments, no one noticed her presence. On another note, the mana in the air was so thick that even if she did release her power, one of the Durgars could have easily mistaken her as someone testing a new artifact. Still, it actually didn't really matter whether she was spotted or not. I had already briefed her on what to do if such a situation occurred. Bending over, Angelica picked up the foiled paper I'd thrown before. Unraveling it, a black fruit appeared in front of her. Before consuming the fruit, Angelica raised her delicate hand and touched the surveillance system. Like pressing onto a bug, the surveillance system broke instantly at Angelica's touch. She was a lot more subtle than me when destroying the surveillance system. But what could I say? She was also a lot stronger than me. All right, it's my turn now. The moment she destroyed the surveillance cameras and prepared to eat the fruit, I knew that it was time for me to act. Calmly walking out of my position, I walked towards the nearest of Durgars. Before coming into this place, I had obviously checked the ranks of everyone present. It wasn't hard to tell, as everyone had their aura out for all to see. Since they were testing artifacts, they had to use their mana. 1 S rank, 2 A ranks, 1 B rank and 3 C ranks. That was the total composition of the group. I was quite surprised by how highly ranked the Durgars present in the room were, but after realizing that even S-ranked artifacts were being tested here, it all made sense. Either way, whatever rank they were, Durgar or dwarf, unless prepared, they were quite weak. Since all the Durgars here came for experiments, none of them seemed to be equipped for combat. Which was exactly the situation I was looking for. What are you guys testing? Walking towards a group of 3, all of whom were in the C rank range, I curiously looked at the artifact in their hands. It was a strange-looking rod that shot electrical beams.
Who
are you? Finally taking note of my presence, one of the Durgars asked. I've never seen you before. Crack. Before the Durgar could finish his sentence, putting both of my hands on his neck, I twisted it without remorse. The sound of bones breaking was loud. Because this all happened so fast, none of the Durgars present were able to react on time. Thud. Finally, with a small thud, the Durgar fell on the ground, dead. Lowering my head and staring at the dead Durgar, I raised my head and looked at the other 2. Would you believe me if I said that it was an accident? Cracka. Without saying anything, the Durgar holding onto the rod channeled his mana into it. Lightning started crackling from it. Guess not. Raising my right hand to block the incoming attack, the rod came into contact with my forearm and a current of electricity ran through my body. KHHH. Groaning slightly, I grabbed the rod with my hand. Then, raising my foot, I drew an arc in the air and kicked him directly in the head. Bang! Face planting onto the ground, the Durgar's blood splattered everywhere. And that's 2. Spurt. Raising my foot, I stomped the head of the Durgar, killing him. Then, at the same time I stomped on the head of the Durgar, I channeled my mana into the rod, and electricity started crackling from its tip. Without hesitation, I swung the rod in the direction of the remaining Durgar, who was left helpless in the face of my attack. Bang! Before he could even react, the shaft of the rod hit him in the face. Heek dash! The Durgar's face caved completely and the sound of bones breaking resounded in the place. What followed after was a bloodthirsty scream that disappeared as fast as it came. Thud. Falling onto the ground, the Durgar died just like that. Bang! Right as I killed the last Durgar, a loud sound echoed from the other side of the room. Lifting my head, I saw Angelica get rid of 2 high-ranked Durgars. One was the S-ranked one, and the other was A-ranked. Must be nice having such an advantage. I enviously thought. Compared to me, Angelica had a much easier time. Having just consumed a devil fruit, restoring all of her demonic energy, Angelica was able to easily defeat the Durgars present. With the fact that she was a demon, her bloodline suppression worked wonders, weakening all of the Durgar present. In fact, the reason why I had such an easy time was probably because of her. That aside, everything that just happened now, occurred within the span of a dozen seconds. This meant that we still had a bit of time before the guard outside would be able to react and come into the room. Before I could let that happen, removing the mask off of my face and extending my hand towards the right, I took out my sword. It's been a while since I last held a sword. Putting it by the side of my waist, my toes gently tapped onto the ground, and with a small bang, my body shot forward, towards the nearest Durgar. He was B ranked. Despite the effects of the bloodline suppression, I didn't blindly assume I could take care of him as easily as the other Durgars I previously defeated. And I was indeed proven correct. The moment I appeared before him, taking out a small device from his dimensional space, the Durgar threw it in the air. Bang! With a light bang, my vision blurred. Covering my eyes with my forearm, I came to a halt. Swoosh! Almost instantly, I heard a whistling sound coming from my right side. Although I didn't know what it was, out of pure instinct, I tensed my calves and pushed my body backward. As I moved backward, I felt a slight sting right on top of my nose. Coming to a halt while opening my eyes and touching the top of my nose, I felt a wet sensation on my hand. Lowering my hand, I found that it was covered in blood. Shh! *T. Abruptly lifting my head, I spotted the Durgar from before holding onto a gun-like artifact aimed towards my direction. Shio! 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 Before I could even fully recover my eyesight, the Durgar aimed his weapon and shot it at my direction. 3 powerful energy blasts launched towards me. Staring at the incoming blasts, I took a calm breath. Drawing a familiar circle in the air with my sword, I took a step to the side and narrowly avoided one of the attacks. Because I was pressed for time, I could only draw one circle. Therefore, after avoiding one of the attacks, moving the ring in front of me, I blocked the second attack. Crack! Unfortunately for me, the ring broke apart as soon as it blocked the attack. Having already dodged one attack and blocked another, I was left completely open. The last energy blast aimed directly at my heart. For a brief moment, I saw my life flash before me. No! Gritting my teeth, using every ounce of energy within my body, I tilted my body ever so slightly to the right, eventually moving my heart away from the energy beam's range. Even then, although I managed to avoid having my heart pierced, I was not completely left unscathed. The blast hit me on my right shoulder, my dominant one. Arg! The moment the attack hit my shoulder, I felt an intense burning sensation on my right side. I let out an agonizing scream. Clank! Losing all sense of feeling in my right hand, I dropped my sword on the ground. Unwillingly, with a look of frustration, I raised my head. The moment I did, the only thing I saw was the barrel of the gun directly aimed at my face. Staring at the barrel aimed for my head, a wry smile appeared on my face. I muttered in a desperate voice. Well, fuck.